Good morning. Happy Monday. It is week 6 of our self-care course, and it is your final week of self-care. Even though I really, really hope that it's not your final week of self-care, but it's your final week of self-care in this class, in this course. I just want to say that I am so grateful for this journey that I've been on with you over these last 6 weeks. I loved getting a chance to connect with you during our group coaching call. And it was so obvious that through this process, you've kind of built in your own little support group system, and everybody was so encouraging, and we were able to celebrate all of our wins, and it just made me feel so good about where you guys are all at. This week is focused on relationships and kind of social life. When we first went back to our self-care wheel, this was an area that was a little bit lower for a lot of us. And obviously, based on our current situation and our circumstances, I'm not surprised by that. We've had to become really creative about how we're fostering our relationships and connecting with family and friends, because all of the ways that we are used to connect with people, it's kind of shifted and changed a little bit. So this week, I want us to really focus on how are we connecting with our relationships that we do get to see daily, face to face, and then how are we still fostering our relationships with maybe people, family members, and friends that we aren't quite ready to meet up with face to face. So I'm going to share with you my screen so we can kind of go over the module for this week. And the very first thing, obviously, is the overview video. So if you're watching this, you're good to go. You have your mindfulness prompt, which this week it's on how can I love more? I thought that with relationships, that idea of love might be a good place to tap into. As always, this is just for you to kind of think about. Maybe you journal on it. Maybe you do a meditation on it, but just more of a food for thought type of thing. And then when you click on the Stress Solutions reading, this is just a reading. But remember Rangan Chatterjee, in his Stress Solutions book, one of his pillars is relationships. Some of you chose to listen to the podcast on Connection in the Heart podcast. So some of this might be repetitive, but it looks at different types of relationships. And what I love so much about the Stress Solution book is that once he gives you information, the next piece of that is he always gives some types of practice or an activity that you can do to reinforce that information. So the first part of this, the first 4 pages, is going to be 2 exercises that promote deeper connection. One is called Seeing Eye to Eye, and this is something that you might want to do with a partnership or a child or a friend that you're super close to. There is a little bit of vulnerability when it comes to holding eye contact, so I would suggest it be somebody that you're pretty comfortable with. And then the other one is talking about a 3D greeting. And again, because one of them includes touch, this would probably be most easily done with somebody who you have already had contact with, because touch is a tricky one right now because people are very apprehensive to shake hands or the idea is to put your hand on somebody's shoulder. So obviously use those parameters, but also put this information in your back pocket to use when you can, and it's a little bit more appropriate. The second part is on intimacy, touch, and oxytocin. I am going to give you a TED Talk to watch that is in alignment with this intimacy piece, but that's something that second piece talks to that. And then the third piece of this is about nurturing friendships, and he includes an exercise about connecting within your community to foster new relationships. So I think new relationships is a really tricky space for some of us. I know that I have a group of girlfriends who I've been friends with since elementary school, and we are still really, really close. But as we've grown up and we've kind of created different value systems and, different relationships in past, that we're not always in alignment to the same type of, just things we're digesting and activities we're participating in. And so I have gotten really serious about trying to create and foster some new relationships that might align a little bit better with me and where I am in my life. And so sometimes we're hesitant to create new connections and relationships with people, but when you participate in activities that are in alignment to your core values, people who are also participating in those types of activities, it's a really nice way to meet and connect with new people. And again, I know that we're not going to new fitness classes and we're not, in these big group settings where this might be a little bit trickier, but this is information that you might be able to pull out or utilize in the future. So that's that. All you're doing is reading that. You don't have to do a discussion or anything for that. This was more just for you as a resource to help with your next piece. So I put all of these action items into one assignment because, again, I'm going to do kind of a choose your own adventure. I want to acknowledge and honor the fact that all of us are in different places with relationships, whether you have a partnership or you're married or you're single, whatever that is. Maybe it's a relationship with a child. So I wanted to create different avenues that you could take and paths that you could take that speak most closely to where you are in your life. The first thing is the love languages. And I know that some of you, most of you, many of you may have taken the love language assessment. I took this when my husband and I were engaged and we were about to get married. We took this as a way to connect and communicate with each other. And I can tell you that we took it again a few years later, and our love languages have shifted and changed. So I tell you this only because if you've taken it and you had a specific love language profile, you might want to take it again to see if you still fall into that. Because the thing about the love languages is we tend to show love the way that we like to receive love. But in a partnership, sometimes that person who you're in a partnership with doesn't receive love the same way. So that's the case for my husband and I, and we were able to kind of recognize and pinpoint, like, well, what are some things that I could do to show you love? At the time that I took this originally, my love language was touch. And I literally am like a spider monkey. I would like attach onto anything and just like hold on. My mom used to call me a snuggle bug, but I think that was like a nice way of telling me that I would just like cling on to her. And my husband is very much like, no, thank you. I don't, he doesn't really appreciate the touch as much as I do. And so he knows that that's my love language. And even though that's not his, he used to set an alarm in the morning before he would have to wake up for 5 minutes. And when his alarm went off, that was a 5-minute indicator to kind of spoon me and snuggle me. And so even though that didn't come naturally to him and that might sound calculated, it was appreciated because I still got to have him express my love language in that like little cuddling before we would have to get up. So just thinking about how we can show up for others in that capacity is a helpful thing to look at with relationships. When you're looking at these different assessments, there's something for everybody, which is why I love this website so much. There's one that is for couples, and I suggest that if you take this, that you also have your partner take it, because the conversations that you can have from this are really awesome. But there's also one for people who are single. I wish that I would have known how I like to receive love so that I could communicate that before I entered a relationship. When you're looking at compatibility and whether or not a person is going to be compatible with you, that's something that I think should be connected with and communicated. There's one for teens that you could either take on behalf of your teenager or they could take it. And there's one for children. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I can tell you right now that they receive love differently. They receive everything differently, discipline differently, redirection, how you talk or give instructions. So we really are our own people, and everything is specific to who we are. So giving that some thought is really helpful. The second one is the Conscious Parenting Masterclass. So I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Shefali, but she wrote this book called The Conscious Parent. And I first was introduced to her through a masterclass that I took on the Calm app. In order to take masterclasses, you have to actually subscribe to Calm. So if you don't have a subscription, that is totally okay. I actually attached a TED Talk from her that you could use in its place. But if you do have a Calm subscription, I would really suggest taking the masterclass because it's in a very step-by-step way, and the way that it's communicated feels more like a class and a learning opportunity. So that's conscious parenting. And then the third thing is intimacy, sex, and desire. So this is a talk with Esther Perel. You might have heard of her. She has done a bunch of podcasts. I know Dax Shepard interviewed her, and I linked that in the optional resources. But she talks about this idea of long-term relationships and how to create more sex and intimacy in your relationship. So it's a little bit racy, but I thought it was interesting and timely for some of us when we are trying to have deeper connections, and maybe we are changing in the way that we connect with our partners. And I just thought that if you wanted to go down that path, I wanted to create a space for you. So you're going to pick one of those three, and then your goal in your support groups is just to discuss one takeaway, and then I would love for you to kind of comment on somebody else's, just to create that open and honest dialogue that you guys have been able to foster. And oh no, that's not it. You have one more thing. I'm sorry. That's like the actual action step though. You only have one action step, but then you have your personal reflection. And this one is so important to me because it was the final one. So we talked about some of those habits that you can use in your Zoom call. I want you to think specifically about little habits and next steps of what you're going to become really clear about. if you're on the group coaching call, the goal was to give you some suggestions to help support you in that grow area. So what of those suggestions are you going to hold on to and try to implement as in these next few weeks when you're not going to be with us to be able to check in? I know that self-care is something that tends to go to the side when we are focused on our other people. And I can tell you that the greatest success you will have at being able to show up for other people is when you take care of yourself. And you know this, and I know this, and those little small habits that are going to compound over time are going to be so helpful in this specifically the start of this school year where there is a lot of stress. So please remember that. And then if you can look back, there are a bunch of resources for you. I have, that's not the right tab. I have videos for the different types of love languages. I have that TED Talk that I just talked about. I have the Dax Shepard interview. So all of those are underneath resources. You will find them there. All right. So that is week 6 and our final week. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of your vulnerability and openness throughout our time together. I told the group coaching calls, but I want to tell everybody that I don't look at this class as being over after 6 weeks. I've had other people who've taken this class before and I still am in contact with them. So if I can ever be of help in any way, whether it be shoot a resource to you, bounce an idea off me, a book, anything, I'm always available and you have my contact information. So just shoot me an email and we can try to connect. And I hope that you have a great week. All right. Take care, everybody.